Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bimbo Mentality, a podcast where we admire the arts and learn about neat things. My name is Bug. I am joined, as ever, by my mesmerizing co-host, Emma. How are you tonight, my love?
Hi, doing pretty good, actually. It's almost the weekend, so,
That's true.
not
It
too
is
bad.
almost the weekend. Hello.
Yeah.
And over in the booth, doing producer shit, it's Lilith. How are you, podcast mom?
I'm very proud of my bimbos. Everybody sounds a lot better this week. We worked out some technical issues. Also, hey, just to pull back the curtain a little bit, this is the first episode that we were recording after the episodes started to go up, and I'm very
That's
proud
true.
of, it's real. We're making this happen. Good job, y'all.
Everybody thinks we're funny and hot. And yeah, this is going to be the first. Our audio quality is probably going to be a lot better because we are just sort of doing what Lilith says this week, and that's making a tremendous difference.
Yeah, to peel back the curtain a little bit more, I didn't realize I was recording in the wrong device for the entire first 4 episodes, so which is kind of a bimbo thing to do, so it kind of works out.
And plus, it's like podcast tradition for like the first handful of episodes to have like extremely messed up audio. We're actually batting like way better than we usually would be.
Well, that is all because of you. Just want to say that. But
We are joined on the podcast this week by our guest, Jordyn Claveria. Jordyn is a New York-based poet who is joining us this week to talk about her experiences with with poetry in general and her current ongoing project, Women in My Garden, a poetry project about archiving the lives of trans women in New York City. How are you doing tonight, Jordyn?
I'm doing very good. I'm very happy to be here. It's always been a dream of mine to be on a podcast talking about poetry. So you guys are fulfilling a fantasy of mine that's been like held for years. So I'm very excited.
oh my god, that's awesome.
We're very, very happy to be here. So I guess, Jordyn, to start out, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of how you found your muse in general, what brought you to poetry, and what kind of inspired you to take that up as your creative outlet?
So I was originally brought to poetry just because of my love of words in general. Like the way that we create phrases to kind of get us through hard times or challenges, and the way that everyone kind of has this unique relationship with their notes app where they're like jot down little ideas or little things they feel about like their crush or about like, oh, I need to like call my dad more and like I want to talk to him about like what our relationship should be or things like that. And all these small things are in a lot of ways poetry, and just experiencing words and trying to beautify the way we speak on a day-to-day basis is just something that amazes me. And I believe that anything that is life-saving, like poetry is and has been for me, is something that is worth mastering and worth doing well. So that's kind of my introduction of how I originally got into, or my original appeal to poetry. But I've been writing poetry for since I was like 9. I used to write little like sonnet things as like a child, and then I kind of took it up more seriously as a teenager, very actively, and then throughout college, post college, I've tried to quit poetry several times, but it's like an addiction I can't give up, and because of that, I've decided to lean into it.
Well, okay, now so that already sort of pulls me in with another question. Why did you try to quit poetry?
I tried to quit poetry for several reasons. One is like my background as someone who is biracial, writing like kind of very flowy slam poetry is like fundamentally a very cringe thing to do. Where I was like, oh, I'm like leaning into this stereotype of like struggling and like identity and writing poetry about that. And the other thing was about kind of figuring out why I write poetry and what's the purpose of it. Because I realized there's a certain point where I was writing poetry not about like beautifying the world, but kind of for the attention it was bringing me. Where I was always very talented at poetry open mics. I like to say that I was like a professional amateur poet or open mic poet. Where I usually like ended the night and everyone was like, "Oh, your poem was the best! Like high five, great job!" And I was writing about like kind of the captivation of audiences as opposed to anything authentic within art or beauty or with myself. And I kind of didn't like what I was making. So I was like, I'm gonna quit for a little bit, or I tried to quit fully, but I couldn't stay away.
I feel like this is like completely, maybe it's the terrible analogy, but I feel like I was more of a sports girly growing up, and I often hear professional athletes who talk about like when they're making all this money and like playing for the adulation of fans, but a lot of them like, because when they're growing up, they have like this singular focus and they don't do anything else, and then they've been doing it for like the vast majority of their life. They sometimes fall out of love with like their favorite thing in the world, which was playing this game, and they have lost like the more like emotional or human connection to it in a way. I don't know if that's like even remotely the similar thing, but I find that really
that's
interesting.
absolutely a similar idea where a lot of what I was doing wasn't about how I was feeling, but it was about like, oh, I know this is going to get cheers, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you do it for the performance of it and the audience as opposed to something coming from within you, it kind of eats away at you. And I think athletes have this very similar experience.
It is so alien to me, the idea of ever being pulled away from doing something because it's giving you attention. I will do anything for attention. I'm a podcaster, damn it.
No, that was definitely one of my challenges because I loved the attention of it. I was like, this is fantastic, but it eventually it becomes like, oh, who am I?
Can we get back also? I really loved like both as like I don't know, I found it really interesting, and I know you have a lot more to say too about the relationship of like people with their notes app, and like how, like, I think for me, I don't think I've ever attempted writing a poem. I don't even actually know what a haiku is, and I've lied my entire life that I kind of know what it is, but I don't know how many syllables go into it or anything. I'm just admitting that for anyone that listens to this right now. So like, I think for me, like, I've always felt, not that it's inaccessible, because I like reading other people's poetry. I think for me, I've never felt like I had anything or any ability to do it, and I'm sure that's just like defeatist, but I sort of liked the through line you were going for about like we maybe are doing things that we don't even really we might not classify as like the classic term of poetry, but I think our connection to it maybe is more broad than what I had thought, and I thought that was really interesting of you to say that.
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about poetry is that poetry, like categorically, is anything that's not prose. So anything you write down that's not in full sentences can be classified as poetry. I think there's probably a little bit more to it. Like there's aspects of like beauty or art, and then there's like the aspect of like, is it good or bad poetry? But what you're doing is poetry, even if you're just jotting down ideas and like a small list. There actually is a funny anecdote from when I was like an editor for my high school lit magazine, where within like a list of publications we had, someone submitted in a historical or their history notes, and everyone was like, this is brilliant. It's like 1984, this happened, 1826, this happened. And it's like, oh, it's like a commentary on like imperialism and war and like our obsession with like violence. And it was actually just someone's history notes. And we couldn't tell the difference. And it's one of the things where like there's beautiful things all around us. And I think the essence of poetry is taking the time to kind of sit with things and find how they're beautiful.
Okay,
Is
I love
posting
that.
is
Because
posting
I was
a form
just
of
gonna say this.
poetry?
I was just gonna
Are
say
the
this.
dick-
I have a
Are the dick jokes I write on the internet a form of poetry?
That might be above my pay grade to qualify you, disqualify you from the title of poet. from your Instagram posts or whatever you're posting on. But I do think that, yeah, in some capacities, there's aspects of poetry that are happening. Like even if you like chant at like a protest, those are poems, just tiny poems. Like
Oh
they're
my
just like
gosh.
one little couplet that people are writing, and we're all chanting it in unison. And those are basic foundational ideas of poetry that use ideas like assonance and rhyme and metaphor. And if you just like build onto that, or even leave it as it is, you're writing poetry.
That is so cool.
Emma, I feel like you were about to tell us something in your notes app, and I don't want to let you
Oh
off the hook for that
no,
one.
you actually like were on the same track with me. So I this is revealing behind the curtain. I definitely have a notes app that's like posts I want to post to Blue Sky, and some of my posts are like written in the sense of they are lines that rhyme as little jokes. So like I guess
That's
and since I am
adorable.
posting them, they are posted to a website. Like I'm technically, I guess I am making poetry. I'm probably like destroying the beauty of the form, but yeah,
Well,
no, that's
there's the aspects of like high art and low art that's always
mhm.
been like a force influencing poetry. Like for a long time, poetry was like you have to have rhyme, you have to have meter, and it was only like within the past couple hundred years that we could move away from that. And people were like, "Oh, what you're doing is terrible. It's the destruction of the art form." But low brow, quote unquote, little blue sky posts can very well be the future. Like people could be looking back on your blue sky post and be like, the way that they synthesize this idea so like succinctly into this singular notion is the art of the blue sky poet. That like what they're doing there, that's the peak pinnacle art form of that poem or that poem format. You're
I
just
love
ahead of
I
the
that.
game.
like I like the idea that in the future it will be widely accepted that posting is a form of poetry, and it's a really like bad form of poetry. It's like
Okay,
a
so
consensus like low point of the art form.
So what I'm being told is that in like 2090, kids will be learning about drill and Halamede like in school when they do like a poetry section on. I got it.
Well,
Okay.
Well, like back in the 1980s, we made jokes that like kids will be learning about like rap in the 2020s. And that is something that's happening where we're studying rap as a form of poetry. So, yeah, 100% in the 2090s, we'll be looking back at Blue Sky posts and being like, this also was a form of poetry and writing and art that people were making. And it will probably be its own categorization. Like even like Shakespeare. Shakespeare's plays were considered lowbrow. And they're like, that's disgusting. It's a bastardization of the art form. And then now we're looking at it as like that's the standard of like high art. In
I'm gonna
2090, you guys will be like, wow, this is so funny, you guys made it in. And then in like 2150, we'll be like, they're high artists. They're brilliant people.
Oh my
I'm
god,
gonna
that'd be
get
amazing.
so much attention in 2150.
That's great. Yeah.
I can't wait.
I can't wait to be the world's first 150-year-old to probably shouldn't put that on the podcast. Let's cut that out. Yeah.
You got it.
Thank you.
I feel like it's come up before, to be honest, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I know.
It doesn't matter.
And for the 3 cis listeners we have, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
for
like your
my
audience
mom only.
demographic.
yeah.
So, Jordyn, tell us a little bit about your current project. I've been kind of familiar with Women in My Garden and where that was headed. I think kind of before it even really started, I knew where you were headed on that. But tell us a little, tell our dear listeners a little bit about that project.
So the Women in My Garden project I'm working on is a poetry archival project that's meant to document the lives of trans women throughout New York City. The basic idea of what I'm doing is I'm inviting trans women throughout the area to my backyard where I have built a garden and I interview them. And it's a very private, very intimate conversation. I typically will like make a pot of coffee and maybe some pastries, and we'll have a chat about anything they want to talk about. And I'll write down quotes or little phrases that they've said throughout the conversation. And then I'll take that and I'll make it into a poem about what the overall conversation was about. And it's meant to kind of document the lives in an artistic form of what it actually looked like for us living in 2025 as trans people.
It's so interesting, the idea of like catching somebody's kind of entire life segment, or even just like catching one conversation, given the way that conversations like ebb and flow and cover so many different dynamics, to condense that down just into a poem is very interesting. I feel like, have you been in a situation yet where like you've almost been stuck having to include like dick jokes in one of your poems?
Actually, I interviewed a comedian, and
Okay.
she made it a point to be like, I don't want you to take me seriously. I don't want you to walk away from this poem as like anything but I'm a goofball. And she like talked about like taking fat bong rips, and like she was making jokes about like, yeah, I'm like a skater now, and like I'm like a teenage girl in like a 20-something-year-old body. And like she was making jokes the whole time, and she's a very funny person. But like that was kind of a challenge, but I wanted to kind of incorporate like kind of the beauty in that too, where like we don't always have to take ourselves seriously. Like we're people as well, and there's a beauty in the sense that we can make jokes about ourselves, and we can make dick jokes, and we can be like, yeah, I'm kind of like a loser still. Like that's okay and that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like documenting the lives of trans women right now, and I mean, I've read all of the installments of Women in My Garden that have been published so far. A lot of them are women who I know at least a little bit, and have like been to parties with, and know kind of their sense of humor. And so much of what being alive and getting through this moment for us is about is being able to just cut loose and laugh and just kind of live our lives in spite of everything that is happening. And I think that's an important thing to think of. I mean, if we're going to be documenting what this moment for us is really like, there's doom and gloom. There are nights where I am having a really tough time getting through it, but it's not all doom and gloom. I feel like, to a certain extent, I feel closer to my community than I've ever been, and I feel more committed to being alive and being a full, complete person, doing cool things and getting out there and existing in the world than I've ever been. So I think that's really valuable and really beautiful, and dare I say, very poetic.
Oh my god.
That's just like the beautiful thing about poetry, right? Where it's meant to encapsulate the human experience. Like even if you look at like major religions, a lot of major religions talk about like in the beginning there was the word, right? It starts with there's something divine and spiritual about speaking and encapsulating words. The way we communicate is how so much of our experiences are shared. And that includes both negative and positive things. Like one of my favorite poems is called Oranges. And it's like a very silly, simple 2 stanza rhyming poem that's like a sonnet. And the beautiful thing about it is that oranges, if you know about essential oils, if you smell it, there's so much serotonin in the essential oil that it will make you smile when you smell essential oil oranges. And the poem does the same thing, where you just like read this poem and you're like, yeah, things are good. And then there's also like beautiful poems that are like about like loss and war or like violence or systemic oppression. And that's also a component of living. And we also use poetry to express that as well. And I think both these are important aspects of being a human being and being a person. And I think that's why poetry is so essential to like life.
I love that. And yeah, I both, I think I've had, I think you've opened my eyes a lot to like what can be encapsulated in the form. And as Bug mentioned too, I think like, yeah, particularly as trans women, like today there was something that was not great that happened. And it's like a constant, thing that I think we're, that we deal with. And I think we have to have almost the, the humor, like to get, people always say trans women are funny. It's because we are, but also because like we like, I don't know, I couldn't have gotten to where I am and I couldn't make it if I wasn't able to like laugh at myself and at the absurdity of life, and like, and have time for that, like that joy too. And so I could definitely see how like our existence, our shared existence is like really ripe for being memorialized in the form.
Within the art form, and within this project that I've been working on, I've gotten to see so many different perspectives on like transness and on our transitions and our failures within those and our successes and kind of the different perspectives we hold about ourselves and about our community and like the pros and cons and the complicated feelings we have about identity, as well as this underlying current that a lot of us are fighting and we're winning in very meaningful internal battles. And I think there's so much hope and connection I've experienced working on this project that I actually love it. And I initially was like, I'm going to try to do this for a year and then publish it. And I'm like, I think I kind of want to do this forever. Where I think I love the art of hosting someone and just having that conversation, but also the finding the beauty in the conversation we've had. It's very a lovely kind of transformative experience.
Essentially, what you're doing is the same thing that we are doing on Bimbo Mentality, but when you do it, it's to create this beautiful encapsulation of somebody's essence. When we do it, it's like to see how much we can take something that somebody is really passionate about and just cover it in snark.
No, I think there's genuine. I mean, look, it's part snark and there's part genuine, understanding and interest too.
No, I agree. We are here to discover, first and foremost, all of the things that make the world neat.
Yes.
If we're talking about like how much we sort of, every part of somebody's life can be caught up in a poem, how like wonder like how mundane you can get it. Like, are there a lot of poems about like having to change your car's oil? Just shit you gotta do. Grocery shopping. What I'm really trying to get at is how many poems total are there about taking a shit?
Oh my God.
I actually don't know if I've read any about specifically.
There has to be one. There has to be a poem out there that
definitely has to be one.
Isn't there some like infamous poetry collection that somebody wrote where like every poem is a tribute to a different kind of cheese, and it's like notoriously the worst poetry collection ever written?
I'm actually not familiar with this poetry collection. It sounds wonderful. It sounds very.
I swear to God, I've heard of this.
I think one of the things about poetry and like the mundanity of it is that I like my introduction back into poetry after my break was like incredibly not mundane, where I basically wrote a collection about myself that was very, very intense. And then I decided to kind of go steer into the mundanity of existence, because I wanted to know and I wanted to pursue ideas of like how to exist without major mythologizing of yourself, if that makes sense. And I think The Woman in My Garden does have a certain mundanity to it, because at the end of the day, all the poems are a brunch in a backyard. Like that's really what every poem's about, like me having a conversation with a girl in my backyard, like at its basis. And then what we talk about is any number of things that they want to talk about, as well as like some steering of the conversation I've influenced with. But there's nothing like extraordinary about it.
I've sort of known you long enough to know some of the things that might have inspired that personal project. Do you want to speak to that project at all?
Yeah. So my first poetry collection that I published was this project called My Rebirth is Dionysus, which was this very intense journey. It was like a cross country motorcycle trip I went on in a suicide attempt because I didn't want to transition, and this was a very intense experience. And it was when I wrote that collection, it was because I was about a year into my transition. I was homeless. I was kind of struggling with like losing friends and like people kind of disappearing on me. And I had to use poetry as a means of justifying my existence and finding beauty in what I had. And it made me re-fall in love with the art form. And I know this is like a little bit more of an intense conversation now, but it was this pursuit of figuring out a way of saying that my existence is divine and what I'm doing wasn't a waste and what I'm doing is worth being celebrated. And when you write something that intense about yourself, you're kind of left with this kind of this like post-sex afterglow of like, now what? Now that I've hit this peak, what do I do now? I found that steering into the mundanity of like people's day-to-day lives, of people figuring out how to be a trans teacher, of how to reconcile their status as an immigrant with their identity as a trans person living in New York. Like these more smaller, like day-to-day struggles we deal with about identity is equally, if not more important than these big major battles. Like it's very easy. I found it incredibly easy to mythologize myself into a divine character. Because that's why I wrote My Rebirth is Dionysus, to say I'm a chthonic god of death and rebirth. That's easy. The harder thing is being mundane, of finding joy and hope in cooking and making coffee every morning. And that's what I admire so much about the interviews I've done. Part of my challenges with my transition, me kind of coming to terms with that, was the idea that I knew that my life would become harder. And I knew that a lot of the great expectations I had for myself, I'm going to have a lot more struggle to achieve those. And then interviewing these people and seeing their own perspectives on their own identity and the hopes and dreams that they bring into their lives, even small ones, has also been very transformative for me.
I think it's awesome and amazing and beautiful the way that somebody can kind of discover themselves through poetry that way. I also think that we should give some credit to how much you can discover your own divinity by riding a motorcycle a lot. I think that was probably a big part of the story.
Yeah, no, that definitely was. People are very entranced by that aspect of my life: the motorcycle, the journey, the drama of it all, and kind of the grandiosity of my manic life decisions.
No, but that is kind of like, I don't know. It's I love me a big showy character moment.
Well, it's because you love the attention of it.
Well, yeah, but I also just love drama. I love when, like, I think that people should try to live their lives as melodramatically as possible.
I back it. I lived that life. Like I was doing it. It's what I chose to do. It's what I had to do. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I back you on that. Like I agree. The melodrama is part of the joy of living.
And I will say, like, A, you made something beautiful out of it, and B, it seems like it worked. Like,
yeah, no, absolutely. There is like an intensity of like, I don't know how I can go back on this now. I'm like sold on this. Like I have tried doing alternatives. I've tried being the best man. Can't do it. Like, no, I am the best woman now, or whatever I am. I'm a woman, but I'm trying my best. And I think that's something that I'm always trying to bring into what I'm writing and what I'm working on. And I think the intensity of the choices that I made definitely kind of strengthened my resolve in like more mundane ways. Like when I get called slurs on the street, it's like, whatever, dude. Like, I ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
yeah.
Am I allowed to cuss on here? No. I'll try.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I've said the word shit like 15 times.
I mean, so is this also, I want to say, is this 2 podcasts in a row we've had motorcycle enthusiasts?
I think it is. I think that is true.
Yeah.
We've had
Oh, you had another motorcycle enthusiast? That's sick.
our
Cool.
podcast. Our previous guest is a cars and motorcycles journalist.
That's so cool.
So look forward to that episode dropping.
There's something so romantic about like motorcycling, you know? I don't know. I think it kind of fits the
I
vibe.
mean, you know, women on motorcycles is just a fundamentally hot thing. Just a fundamentally
It's true.
hot concept.
It's true. It's like it takes like it's like, okay, man on motorcycle, okay, cool. Like woman motorcycle, elevated. Like man DJ,
Exactly.
dime a dozen. Woman DJ, elevated. Right? That's the thing. That's my takeaway on that.
Well, I think the same
but-
idea is applied with poetry. Like male poetry, male manipulator. Woman poet, oh, she's Sappho.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. 100%. I completely agree. I actually, one question was like, do you feel as time goes on, you know, and I feel this like desire to, you know, like when I'm gone, I hope, you know, someone remembers, like, I hope I made an impact on even just one person, or, you know, that our lives as trans women like matter. I know they do, but can you tell in the moment how what you're doing is so special, so that like when we've all gone there, your poetry still memorializes like the lives of these incredible women? Like, is that like a motivating kind of factor when you're doing this too?
Yeah, absolutely. So the original concept of this idea was from me listening to another podcast interviewing a different poet. His name's Hanif Abdurraqib. Amazing poet. He writes a lot about the state of Ohio and his love for his hometown. He, in a lot of ways, I think he is the king of Ohio. I think he should have that title, like the meme title. That should be him. But he mentioned this idea of kind of archiving people, and how he has all these people around him who are poets, and they're not aware that what they're doing is writing poetry. Like he talks about how his barber is his favorite non-poet poet, where his barber has the most insightful statements and these most beautifully crafted sentences, and he's just like a barber. Like no one's writing down what he says. So what he was trying to do is he's like, let me write down some of the things that this guy has said. And I thought, you know, some of the most meaningful conversations I've had and some of the most transformative experiences I've had in like both accepting myself and finding hope in existence is with like my fellow trans women. We need to be documented and archived, and people need to see the things we say and the beauty of our lives. And I thought, well, I thought it was like an honor for whoever archives this. And I also thought, well, there's like problems with like objectivity. So I was like, let me steer into the art of it. where things don't need to be objective. I'm influencing the conversation. I'm trying to make art and trying to emphasize and maximize the admiration and beauty of what they're saying. And I do think it's a great like honor to be allowed to do this, and that I've had so many people entrust me with this, and I've seen the impact of the conversations and the poetry that's like come out of it. Because all the poems that are published right now online are like snippets; they're not the full poem. So if you like go onto the Instagram page, like it's not like the full thing. I'm trying to release in the spring a full like collection of each of the poems in like a zine format, because physical media is so important. Um, but just watching, like I've watched people cry over reading these poems I've written, and it's it's beautiful. It's like beautiful because like their own words are kind of thrown back at them, and they're like, I am someone and something worth remembering.
I think that's really beautiful. I did not know about that forthcoming scene with the full poems. That is, I'm very excited about that. I think we've sort of we've talked a lot about your work, which is great. That was sort of the intention. I am curious if you have anything to speak to as to kind of what is interesting in the wider world of poetry right now. If this were an art form that somebody were looking to get into, I find it personally quite difficult to kind of find poetry. I don't, as far as I know, there's no like Billboard top 40 poems, although there probably there should be. Yeah. Yeah.
The hottest poems of the 80s, 90s, and today.
And today?
Poems Request Live.
So there's like a variety of publications that exist that publish famous poets as well as like up and coming poets. As far as like with your first question of what's like the current state of poetry, we're kind of in what a lot of people are saying a decline of poetry, where poetry is becoming worse and worse. But that's just like what old people say, if that makes sense, where it's like, oh, our generation's the worst. Yeah. We ruined the art form. But that's kind of has to do with like Rupi Kaur's popularity of like the Instagram poet, which is like, I think is partially unfair to her. Not to be like I'm a huge fan of her poetry, but she like isn't, I wouldn't like classify her like major rise to fame as like even her poetry. But we are in an era where people are considering we're in like a decline of like good poetry. There's a variety of reasons for that. Part of it is that like, the government we live in doesn't want to give voices to marginalized identities. Another part of it is that the notion of what like good and bad poetry is kind of abstract, where I don't think we should shame people for connecting to things that are lowbrow, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people enjoy things because it's elite. And I don't think poetry is elite. I think poetry is kind of the lowbrow art form. I just think there's a mentality that it's easy to take to be like, I get it, I'm in the in. But I think the most meaningful poetry is poetry that's accessible and that makes sense to people. Like, the goal isn't to be like, let me be as confusing as possible. It's let me convey what I need to convey in a meaningful way, right? And then in terms of like, if you want to get more into poetry, I highly recommend looking at who like your state laureate is. I think it's important to recognize that like every state in the United States has their own poet laureate.
I had no idea. I had no idea about that.
Yeah. Also, the United States as a whole has a poet laureate. It's also like they have shifts, and each year there's new major people coming in and out as like major poets. There's also like a huge rise in queer poetry happening right now, where like Ocean Vuong is a very famous Vietnamese American poet, and his writing influences heavily, or takes a lot of influence from that, but also his identity as a queer person. And I think he writes some of the most beautiful lines possible. Like I think his ability kind of integrate like meter as well as like assonance play. His assonance play is on game. Like he is a very talented poet. And I think kind of finding these poets who identify with you and that you can identify with are what's going to kind of awaken you to the joy of poetry, because it's really a means of connecting with other people, of being able to say these are things I'm feeling that I can't express through words, right? One of the most meaningful conversations I had about poetry is I was at a writing event and someone was like, if we could add more words to the English language, what would you add? And I was like, I don't think I'd want to add anything, because the beauty of poetry is that no matter how many words or definitions I have, it's not enough. Like, if I could just say to someone, I love you, I wouldn't write a love poem. And the beauty of poetry is kind of the limitations of your feelings. And when you're depressed or sad or you're happy and elated and you don't have the exact verbiage to describe what you're feeling, you can turn to poetry, right? And any feeling you have, you're like, I feel melancholy. Look up like melancholy poems. You'll find things that match your mood. And that's like the best entryway I think anyone can kind of get into it.
So is it kind of like for me when I'm in a certain mood, like when I'm in a sad mood, I like with music, I guess, right? Like I seek out sad songs. I want to wallow in my sadness and like cry a lot, you know? And so like
Totally.
Is that kind of with
relatable?
Is that kind of with poetry where like you connect with it on that emotional level like that?
Absolutely. That's exactly what poetry is doing, where the same way you want to wallow in your sadness, sitting in your bed and being like, I need to read so-and-so sad poems. Like if you're like very angsty, I was very angsty as a teenager. I read like a bunch of Bukowski, which is like not the best poet, but like I was reading him nonstop and I was like, yeah, I'm also edgy. When I'm an adult, I'm going to drink beers and have lots of sex and be sad all the time. Like that was my dream. And like it got me through those feelings. And that made me feel less alone. Like my experiences isn't as crazy as I thought it was. But saying that like, oh, I'm also angsty, like that didn't do it. I need someone to write something and make art that said, hey, this is how I feel. And I'm like, yeah. And that's why I'm like, everyone should be seeking out poetry all the time.
I love that. I think, you know, thinking about like, okay, yes, I absolutely sort of sit down with music when I need to like relate to something to cry it out. But there are also many other contexts in which I use music. And the question that I'm bringing myself to is, could somebody make the poetry equivalent of a Sex Jams playlist?
Oh,
poems
100%.
to fuck to?
100%. Oh,
have you ever done it?
Jordyn? I'm gonna be real with you. There was a point in my life where I would like go home with women and be like, can I read you a poem before we like...
That was going to be my next question.
That's so cool.
Oh my god.
It's 100% a thing. People love poetry, and especially like sapphics. Sapphics love poetry. Like we as a community adore it. Because it's how do you make the mundane beautiful, you know? And if you wanted to be like, hey, let's like get like a sex playlist of poetry, I think like if you learn Spanish and you read Neruda in Spanish, it's like a sex playlist. Neruda is a very sexy poet.
I absolutely misheard that as Naruto for a second. Anyway, that doesn't matter.
Naruto.
I'm also, I want to back up a little bit. There was a lot of talk about assonance play, and bimbos, come on, you gotta hit that.
Okay, I was smiling.
You gotta hit the assonance.
We gotta hit the assonance play.
Okay, first I thought you said abstinence. First I thought it was abstinence play, and then I thought it was assonance, and I was like, And I really, I was giggling and I was like, no, stop it. Don't say that, Emma. Don't say that right now.
Should we record an assonance play joke now and like ADR it back in?
We can retrospectively put it in.
Just awkwardly throw it in there. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, part of the experience of recording this podcast is every now and again you have a joke lined up and you just miss your chance.
That is very true. I also want to go back real quick to this state and national laureate. And so is the US laureate, is it kind of like a Miss America situation where they have 50 laureates and then the 50 of them compete to be the US laureate? Because that would be really cool.
Is there a poet laureate swimsuit portion?
I hope not. I've seen some of these poets, and they're beautiful poets. I don't think they're my type, always. Which is, fair. A lot of these people are, sad. And, it's a thing. But...
Listen, I've seen some sad people who are very hot.
No, I'm not... You're totally right. I'm not body-shaming the sad girls. I'm saying most of these people are much older as well. Though, actually, no, never mind. Older people are also very attractive. I guess you can advocate for the swimsuit section of Poet Laureate competitions.
And I will.
Yeah, no, I think this could be a future.
If there is a swimsuit portion of the Poet Laureate competition, my chances of winning shoot way up. So I'm absolutely advocating.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
As far as the process for how laureates are selected, I believe it's more on a state-by-state basis. I believe for the federal laureate, it's kind of major people kind of choose, as opposed to we all are entering our names, if that makes sense.
Got it. Okay, so there's no America's Next Top Laureate competition.
Yeah. It would be cool. I mean, it definitely would make poetry more exciting.
Yeah, an American Idol style, elimination style reality show to select, America's favorite poet. I'd watch the shit out of that.
And in just the early rounds where anyone that they let in there that even if they couldn't sing, it's anyone walks in there with something they just wrote. That I would watch the shit out of that. Poetry Idol would go so hard.
Poetry Idol would. Well, have you guys gone to a lot of open mics?
I've been to a few.
No, you gotta take me to some of those.
Okay, let's go to some poetry open mics first, and we can see if your stance stays the same.
Sounds good. So real quick, I don't know if this is anything you've kind of thought about at all. Have you given any thought to where your art might go after you've sort of completed the zine of Women in My Garden and what might be next for you?
I do have a couple of personal projects I'm working on. And as far as the zine goes, I want to do this as an annual publication. So I want it to be Women in My Garden 2025, Women in My Garden 2026 to 2027, Women in My Garden 2027 to 2028, etc., etc., etc. And I don't necessarily see an end date. I'm enjoying it so much, and it's not there's oh no, I'm all out of trans women. I can't find any more trans women. I got all of them.
That in New York City and Brooklyn.
Yeah, in Brooklyn, New York City.
And after the mayoral election, it's now mandatory for transition, I've heard. So
that's true.
No, 100%. It's happening. We're coming for you.
Okay, so get used to it.
That's that's my primary focus right now, but I also have a couple of personal projects that I'm working on. Right now I have a title, and I of course I'm probably halfway through a personal collection, a full-length poetry collection. My first collection I did was a chapbook, so it's a much shorter publication, but this one I want to do a full length. This is a collection that I'm going to be titling We Felt Heavy Like the Rain, and it's about the experience of kind of finding joy in the smaller aspects of life post-transitioning.
I love that.
I'm about halfway through, so I think probably 2026 to 2027 is when my publication timeline, and I think I might actually try to go through a publisher this time. So my previous one was like a zine I did, but this time I'm like, I'd like to try to get it launched on a larger scale. Though also I don't want to be like, this is my plan, guys, and then 2027 rolls around and you're like, Jordyn is a failure. So let's keep this on the down low. I only can tell like the podcast.
Don't worry. At most, you're going to let down like the 15 listeners, so it's going to be totally okay. So.
Listen, trying is never failure. It is only failure to not try.
It's true.
That's also poetry.
We've been going for a little bit now. I think it is time to assess what we have learned. Emma, what have you learned today?
Oh my gosh, so much. I learned that there's a state and national laureate, and they fight in a competition. I learned that...
like Dragon Ball Z style, yeah.
Dragon Ball Z. And they spend like 8 episodes powering up their poems. No, I think like what I... Honestly, I think what I'm going to take away is something I've sort of been feeling just with like artistic pursuits, sort of in general, but like this I think really crystallized it of artistic pursuits not being for folks that are quote unquote like necessarily just like good at them immediately. I think I've been sort of scared away from attempting things like that. And I also think like I really loved the focus several times during the conversation today on like the little moments in life are just as profound and beautiful as the big ones. And I think that's what I'm going to take away from today.
I learned that apparently poetry open mic nights are not good.
I didn't say that. I did not say that.
Mm-hmm.
I said you should go and make your own opinions.
I learned that poetry open mic nights are not guaranteed to be good.
That's reasonable.
I learned that spending a lot of time on a motorcycle can really change your life. I have not learned a lot about assonant play because I already know all about that, baby. And I think I also have learned a lot about the ways that you can really kind of find your muse in anything, and you can find beauty in anything, and there is beauty in just resilience and in humor and in living your life. And there are many ways to create poetry just in every aspect of your life. So Jordyn, the question that we always bring to our guests at the end of our podcast is, the goal here is very much always to see if you can think like a bimbo enough to explain the thing that you are passionate about to us. So having heard what we have learned, do you, Jordyn, feel like you successfully thought like a bimbo?
Have I felt like a bimbo?
If you thought like a bimbo, if you were able to think like a bimbo enough to teach us about what you are passionate about.
I think I've managed to get into the bimbo mentality, and I think I've managed to share with you guys and hopefully the listeners as well just why poetry is so magical and why you guys should all be pursuing it more.
I agree. I think that this has been a very a more in places a more kind of intense conversation than we are necessarily used to here. But I think that that's beautiful, and I think that is kind of what you expect and what you hope for when you bring a poet on your podcast.
Poets famously cannot be casual. We cannot be chill. Like, everything is so dramatic. We have it rough.
Well, I think this has been a great conversation. Jordyn, before we wrap up, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, you guys can absolutely follow my poetry project at Woman in My Garden on Instagram. I'll definitely be updating everyone about the publication of the zine in the spring. And yeah.
Well, I think that that is going to do it for us this week on Bimbo Mentality. We will catch you all next week, dear audience. We love you.
Hold on, Bug. I actually think
Yes.
that Emma needs to close us out with a poetry reading.
No.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Emma, you
I think that's
You have to do that.
absolutely Emma.
I think
Okay,
Emma, you
wait,
have
so-
to do that right now.
Reading.
Look, I need to give some context. Okay, so we have Jordyn, we have a running joke on this. Randomly, like in like 2 or 3 of our episodes, without us trying, the Marvel character Squirrel Girl came up like organically, and it became a running joke that she be mentioned. And so like halfway through the episode, I was like, I wonder if there's any poetry about Squirrel Girl to shoehorn it in.
Okay, is there?
There is the first result was called Tribute to Squirrel Girl, and it's got some art
Okay, well, yeah.
involved.
I think
And
I
I'm not
think you
gonna
need
real
to
quick.
read it for us.
I'm not gonna read all
Please
of
share.
these. I won't read all 3 verses or stanzas. I forget which one's poetry. But
Both of those are poetry, but yes.
okay, I'm gonna read the last one, which is just Squirrel Girl was ready to begin her new battle cry. Thanos was after her, and she kind of knew why. She had bested him along with her school friends. The confidence she had was enormous. It would never end.
Okay.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Amazing. Beautiful.
Oh my god.
I think that's gonna do it for us this week on Bimbo Mentality. We'll catch y'all next week, audience.
Bye.